Welcome back to Freedom Through Fitness, the podcast that's here to shift the way you think about movement. Around here, we believe fitness isn't about punishment. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about what feeling fit lets you do, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and even socially. From running around with your kids without gasping for breath, to feeling confident enough to step into any room and back yourself, to rebuilding trust in your body after years of frustration or injury. This is your place to explore what it really means to reclaim your strength, your confidence, and your freedom through fitness. I'm your host, Meg Batchelor, founder of Focused Personal Training, a Southampton-based coaching business helping real people create lasting change. You'll hear stories, strategies, and conversations with people who've done just that, and how you can too. If something here sparks an idea, gives you clarity, or makes you curious, we'd love to hear it. Visit us at freedompod.focusedpt.co.uk, share what's resonated, or ask for support if you're ready to take action. In this episode, we explore a side of health and fitness that often gets overshadowed by quick fixes and diet culture, our relationship with food. I'm joined by Southampton-based nutritional therapist Jenna Seward, whose own journey from disordered eating as a teenager to helping others transform their health gives her a unique and powerful perspective. Jenna works extensively with women's health, PCOS, fertility, and gut health, but her message applies to everyone. Food should be about nourishment, energy, and freedom, not punishment or restriction. In our conversation, she cuts through the noise of calorie counting, fad diets, and weight loss injections, and instead shares practical, sustainable strategies for building a positive relationship with food and improving long-term health. This is a frank, inspiring, and empowering discussion that will leave you rethinking what healthy really means and how the choices we make today can build resilience for tomorrow. So let's dive in.
Our body is so much more than aesthetics. It's how we feel on the inside that's more important. Health is so much more than a number on a scales or a calorie that you're counting. I'm very against both of those things. Okay, welcome to the podcast, Jenna Seward, who is Jenna Dawn Nutrition, Southampton-based nutritional therapist. Today, we're going to be talking all about your story, what brought you to the career that you have, and also how you want to be able to offer your services to help the local community. So thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Thank you for having me. So can you take me right back to where did this idea of getting involved with nutrition start for you? That's a really good question. It's not something I'm actually used to talking about, but it started probably really young. And I've had a few conversations recently where other people have been in a similar situation where when I was very young, I was very aware of my body, and growing up, I think it is really hard for teenagers to find what's normal and be open to talking about things like periods and body image. And I started my period when I was 9. So wow. Yeah, and I also lived with my dad. So I was really aware I was much bigger than other children really early on, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. So naturally, I took nutrition into my own hands, which wasn't really the best thing when I was a teenager. And that's really probably where it did come from. And I had eating disorders as a teen, and luckily, because I was so young and I was in a school, I did get help, which was really helpful. But that's where my journey began. It went from being quite overweight as a child, managing it very badly, to actually learning how to enjoy food again and nourish my body again. And that's kind of where it started, really.
A girl's relationship with fitness in particular is formed in such a huge way and can be damaged in such a big way during their adolescence. So how do you think that shaped you in terms of where you've gotten to today?
With the nutrition side and the food side, I do agree it's the same. For me anyway, that my relationship with food and how I look at food was definitely impacted throughout that period. And I suppose, like I said, having the support that I had when I was a teenager, I had a counsellor, I had a psychologist, and I had a dietitian, all really helping me reshape my mindset around food. And what it taught me was that actually our body is so much more than aesthetics. It's how we feel on the inside that's more important. Health is so much more than a number on a scales or a calorie that you're counting. I'm very against both of those things, which I can talk about in a minute. But it definitely shaped my mindset into looking at food as nourishment rather than punishment, and not focusing on measurements and scales, and focusing on how I feel. I think it's really made me connected with my body. Like, I know when there's something that's not right.
I think that's such a huge challenge, because even though women being strong rather than
skinny is at least starting to come slightly further forwards. I think there's still such a strong pull from social media and from even just society as a whole that still expects women to eat and exercise to be smaller all the time and to be less and to judge themselves on the scales. Is that something you still see quite a lot when you are starting to work with clients?
Yes, definitely. And it's, for me, it's very much trying to repair people's mindsets around food and try and get them to look at it differently and understand that it's about nourishment, and being skinny doesn't mean being healthy, and being healthy doesn't mean being skinny, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can you remember any really particular sort of real milestones in your journey of recovery where almost like a realization, that imaginary light bulb went ping over your head and you went, like, what were the things that really started changing your course?
I think there was a few things, really. I think just noticing that if you are in a restrictive mindset, you're just going to miss out on life. It does take time. If you're somebody who has been in that mindset, it's not going to be an overnight change. It does take time working on your mindset. I remember even being at uni, even though I was recovered by then, I was still quite in that mindset. If people cooked for me, I needed to know what was in it. And I just realized if I carried on being like that, I was never going to go for meals. And it was just that sort of realization that you are going to miss out on life.
It's really unfortunate that it's only really with the benefit of hindsight that we can look back and think, why did I let that insecurity stop me from being able to live life to the max? And I know that you work with quite a lot of women, and is that often something that you hear, I didn't do this because of how I feel about how I look?
Yeah, definitely. And it's always people saying, oh, when I'm this size, I'm going to do this. Often a big focus is weight loss. People come to see me and it's explaining that, live in the now, focus on making yourself feel better by optimizing not just nutrition, but like stress, sleep, gut health, and then it will be easier for you to naturally lose weight anyway. But don't let weight loss be your focus, because you're never going to be happy if that's your core focus.
It's very tough. Sometimes that extrinsic motivation can be a powerful tool to at least get people going. Not necessarily in aesthetics, but from a family perspective. What kind of angle does that bring to the nutritional side of things for you?
Yeah, so that's a really great one. And that's where I can say, right, before we start focusing on weight, for example, let's focus on optimizing your sleep. Let's make sure that you're leaving like a 3-hour window before, of eating and going to bed. And now that you'll have more energy. And let's focus on, and I kind of focus it on the right foods that are going to give people more energy. And naturally, if they're kind of getting the right sleep, eating more protein, having more fiber, not having so much sugar, so not having the crashes in blood sugar and all those sorts of things, then they're going to have more energy of the children. And naturally, by doing those things, they will lose weight.
I think it just must be a daily battle, because I see it not just in my clients, but in myself. I still have really deep set views on, how I should be, how I should act, how I should look, even though I know better. How do you teach people to break that cycle and to start creating a positive relationship with their food, not just for themselves, but to influence the people around them?
Where my journey started so young, and my daughter's 6, she's only 3 years away really from where I was when I started my period and started being really aware of my body. People don't realize how young children are when they start noticing these things and start picking up on the language you use around food and also your own body image. My kids eat ice cream, they have sweets, they have chocolate, not all on the same day, not every day, but there's no restriction. I don't label foods good and bad. As adults, you can still have these foods as part of a healthy lifestyle. It's just making sure that you're having other foods as well. And that's what I do with my kids. So there's nothing that is off the table. They can kind of have whatever they want. But they'll still eat their vegetables. They're really good with food, because I won't ever label foods good and bad or force them to finish a plate.
What do you see is the key reason why so many people are struggling more with things like food addictions and eating the wrong kinds of food that wasn't an issue maybe 50 years ago?
Cost, availability, time that we have to prepare meals. Let's be honest, the foods which are easier and quicker to prepare are the ones that are probably the most unhealthy, aren't they? So it's and cheaper. So commonly fresh food takes longer to prepare and it's more expensive. So there's a combination of things like that, I think. going into the research, you can start looking at gut health, and we know that actually there's certain species of bad bacteria which will make you crave more unhealthy food. And it's a bit of a cycle, because then the more unhealthy food you have, the more of this bacteria you have. And there's been loads of research to say if you have good strains of friendly bacteria, and that's what dominates your gut microbiome, then you're actually more likely to crave whole foods and more natural foods, which they obviously thrive on.
Is day-to-day life starting to feel harder than it should? Do you find yourself out of breath chasing your kids or even grandkids? If you feel like every day has a new ache and pain that didn't used to be there, or you're just feeling like your strength and your confidence isn't what it was, you can turn this around. Help is out there, and you wouldn't believe the difference it can make. At Focused Personal Training, we help people rebuild strength and resilience from the inside out, no matter where they're starting from. It's not about smashing yourself in the gym, it's about reclaiming the energy, mobility, and self-belief to live the life you want. If you're ready to take the first step, reach out to us at freedompod.focusedpt.co.uk. Your freedom starts with that first conversation.
It also impacts your mood and things like motivation. And let's be honest, if you haven't got a lot of energy from multiple reasons, and you haven't got a lot of motivation, the last thing you're going to want to do is food prep on a Sunday or get home and make a long meal. You just want something quick and easy.
Can you tell me a little bit more about gut health? What are the big hitters that we're trying to get into our diet to help stimulate that lovely microbiome in your gut that helps with the hormonal balance, helps with your mood and energy levels?
So when it comes to gut health, the best thing you can do is add as much fruit and veg in your diet. Ideally, a variety, the optimum anyway, is having 30 different plants in your diet. When I say plants, it can be herbs, it can be like nuts and seeds, beans, pulses, as well as fruit and veg. So the optimum is having a variety of 30 different ones a week. Basically, our good gut bacteria thrive on diversity of fruits and vegetables.
So the herbs and spices, obviously they're not just there for flavour, and to kind of spice up your whole foods so that they can compete a little bit more with perhaps the processed foods that artificially have the flavours packed in there. But you're almost, I guess what you're saying is you like microdosing with those?
Yeah, definitely, because it's all just adding different nutrients in which your gut bacteria essentially thrive off. And things like the herbs specifically are really high in that's called polyphenols, which are like antioxidants, which help lower inflammation in the body and get rid of free radicals, which also then make it a nicer environment for your gut bacteria to thrive. So it's not just about feeding the bacteria, it's about making the environment as friendly as possible for the bacteria to thrive in. And that's about lowering inflammation, which herbs are amazing for, even in small quantities. Yeah.
So with my herbs and spices that I'm putting with my dinner, obviously I bet many people listening are like me. It's very easy to buy a big old pack of fresh herbs, and then most of them end up going into the bin. So the dried stuff is a lot easier to keep for a longer period of time, but am I still getting the same amount of benefit from dried stuff as fresh stuff?
You are better off using the fresh herbs if you want to get the highest amount of polyphenols. Obviously it's still good if you've only got dried herbs to add those in, you're still going to be adding something, but ideally if you want to get the best impact, it is the fresh herbs. And I definitely hear you in that they end up at the back of the fridge. Something that I would recommend is putting them in the door of your fridge. So I'm very much about visibility. Putting them somewhere so you don't forget about them, and maybe even writing it down, so when you're getting in the habit, that is something which is hard. But yeah, ideally fresh herbs are better.
So what about frozen? So you can freeze fresh herbs, can't you?
That would be fine. That was my next thing I was going to recommend, actually. Yeah, freezing them is fine. That's the next best thing. You could freeze them. You could chop them up and freeze them and then put them in.
And I guess that would be the same with batch cooking. So if perhaps a big old bunch is too much, but you make a larger quantity and freeze some, we're still getting all the nutritional benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good way to do it as well.
So how do you see your interaction with what you've learned with your children? Do they cook with you? Do they have any interest at all? Or is it more the typical challenge of feeding young children? And
no, actually I'm quite lucky, so they like getting involved. So I've got a blender, I've got a juicer, and I don't know if you found it as the listeners find it. If I'm having something, my kids want to have it. So they tend to have what I have. If I sit there with like a bag of carrots or sugar snap peas, they are definitely going to try them. They don't love everything that I have, but yeah, no, they love getting involved a lot of the time with making juices or smoothies or having whatever I'm having, or getting a little bit involved in cooking. They're still quite young, so I get a bit anxious with them helping me with the cooking because it's obviously hot, but they are pretty good. They do like getting involved, and they'll try things. They don't like spicy stuff. So if I don't want them to have something, I just say it's spicy. That chocolate's spicy. I'm like, oh, it's too spicy. Can't have that.
Putting fruits and things into a smoothie, does it change how beneficial they are versus just eating them whole? Or is that just something that we've been told and considering that someone else will say, but you chew them up anyway, what difference does it make having them in a smoothie versus having them whole?
Obviously, it's still got the same nutritional value to it, so it doesn't make any difference. I get what you're saying. If you're somebody who doesn't chew your food properly, then is it going to be digested the same way? But ultimately, the nutritional value is still the same, whether it's blended or you're having it whole. So it's not really going to make any difference in that sense. And I love smoothies because you can add so much into them, and they're quick, aren't they? You can chuck lots of the flaxseed, chia seed, herbs. But no, having it nutritionally wise, they're both the same if you have a whole or a smoothie. Have you heard differently then?
I'd say it's probably quite old information, more from like a Slimming World background, that you can have a banana, but you can't have a mashed banana because there's something about the fibre in it. And then you get the opposing view and things like that. I guess the angle that I could kind of understand a little bit more is this concept that when you blend a food, when you drink a food, you tend to consume more of it than you would if you had taken your time to chew it.
Oh, I see.
You know, that's something that you just said about how, but you could put in some flaxseed into it, you could put some chia seeds into it, and that addition is going to make all the difference in terms of how we digest that smoothie. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when it comes to smoothies, I definitely wouldn't be keen on someone just having loads of fruit in a smoothie because of the sugar content. Like what you just said, it's so much easier probably to have whole punnett strawberries in your smoothie because it's so easy to drink it, and like you say, when you're chewing it, you're more aware of how much you're consuming in that sense. So yeah, when it comes to smoothies, I'm very much about adding in lots of fiber, so whether that's adding in like flaxseed, chia seed, spinach, as well as adding in some proteins, that you're balancing your blood sugar levels, because although it's fruit, obviously it can still spike your blood sugar levels. So, and it helps bulk it out a little bit more. And that's really what my main aim is, especially with a lot of my clients, is keeping blood sugar levels nice and stable, adding as much fiber as possible. So when it comes to smoothies, definitely there would always be lots of fiber and some protein and fats added in there as well.
Brilliant. And obviously the chia seeds, they're like little frog spawn, aren't they? After a while, they sort of bulk out there.
Exactly. So that's really great. They've got a really good amount of omega-3 fatty acids in as well. And yeah, they obviously swell up a little bit. So they're really good at helping keep you fuller for longer, and a really good source of fiber. So if anyone's constipated, they're amazing. But obviously just in general for your gut bacteria as well, they're really great. So I always add those in and get people to add those in.
Obviously, if people are listening, don't let that put you off chia seeds. Me calling them frog spawn. It's just that they do that little, like, they grow overnight in your fridge.
So I love it as well. Yeah, but you can make chia seed jam that's like that as well, because of the consistency it goes to, the consistency. There's so much you can do with it, but some people are a bit put off with the texture. So yeah, you have to try it and see. I love it. So yeah, just depends.
So in terms of your calling as now a nutrition therapist, is there a particular field that you're super interested in that you're niching into at all?
So when I started, I don't know about anyone like fitness who might have done the same thing or other nutritionists, but I was like, I'm just going to help everyone. I want to help the world. And then I realized actually I can't do that. It was like too much, and it was just overwhelming, and you can't be an expert in every area. So the kind of areas I've landed in is women's health, but within women's health, specifically PCOS and fertility, which often come hand in hand, because a lot of women who unfortunately have PCOS struggle with fertility. So that's kind of why those two areas are linked together. And I've done additional training in fertility as well to help women with that, and couples in general.
So for people who haven't heard that term before, could you explain what PCOS is and how it affects women?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, polycystic ovary syndrome. So it's a really, really common condition that unfortunately affects lots of different women, and it can affect them differently. So some women have cysts, but not every woman has cysts. It also impacts your androgen levels. So we all have androgens, they're male hormones like testosterone. And in PCOS, women have a higher level of testosterone, which often is linked to having more facial hair and struggling to lose weight in irregular periods. And the other symptom of PCOS is insulin sensitivity, which also it impacts so many things. So it can be one of those, it can be at least two of those three things women has to have to be diagnosed with PCOS.
Think you're too old to start something new, too busy, or maybe just too intimidated to even walk into a gym? You're not alone, and you're not wrong for feeling that way. But the truth is, you can build strength and confidence without flipping your life upside down, even if you've never been a gym person. At Focused Personal Training, we'll meet you where you're at. Real life solutions, real people, personalised support, and no egos. Let's start a conversation about what's actually possible for you. Head to freedompod.focusedpt.co.uk and let us know what's holding you back. We're here to guide you to the solution and a sense of freedom through your own fitness.
but a lot of the time women do go undiagnosed, unfortunately. So that's kind of part of the reason what drew me to helping women with this condition, because I think it's still very misunderstood in the regular healthcare sector, and it's something which can really impact women, like I say, with fertility, and unfortunately they're still being told that the pill is the only thing that can help support them, and we know that there's so much that can help.
Obviously, a huge topic at the moment is the use of weight loss injections and how they are changing people's experience of their relationship with food and weight loss and things like that. What kind of interaction have you had with that so far in terms of your patients, but also what you've learned is your role as a nutritional therapist?
It's really hard because I fully understand why people are drawn to taking these weight loss, drugs. Because to be honest, like 15 years ago, I might have been tempted as well, because, when you've been battling for so long, it seems like the miracle. But what I guess I try to educate people on is that there are other sustainable, it can be a really good way to get things going for some people. But obviously you don't want to be on medication for your whole life. So I think what I've tried to do is be empathetic to anyone who has decided to go down that journey and try and show them there are ways of kind of reintroducing food when you're off the drug in a healthy way so that you don't gain weight again. And what I found is that obviously people are scared to come off it, really, because and I think that worries me as well, because I worry what this is going to look like in another 10 years and 20 years, because I've obviously heard horror stories. So
yeah, I think I've had quite a few conversations with people about it, because I'm really coming at it just being inquisitive about it. I want to understand it. I do understand it from, I've struggled with my weight up and down throughout my life, as have all of the women in my family, and men as well, particularly down one side. And the idea that you could just fix it and it's no longer the struggle it's a very big draw. But something that has come up over and over again, and particularly with people that I've spoken to who've gone through quite a big transformation with the injections, is that there needs to be an exit strategy. And I think that's what you're kind of saying, is that you don't want to be on these things for your whole life. But if you have struggled with your weight for such a long time, and then suddenly something fixes that and takes that pain away, the fear of going back to that place of pain must put so much pressure on people. And from what I've heard, the companies who are supplying it, particularly on a private level, aren't too worried about the getting people off of the drug side of things. So there's not an encouragement there. So I guess the huge part of your role, if you're working with clients who are on the weight loss injections, is to try and have the journey in tandem, I guess, the learning journey in tandem, so that the learning is there to catch them when they come off of the injection. Is that about on the right lines?
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. And I wish that was already in place, of like a bit of a plan. And that's the same with anything, any sort of procedure as well, like gastric plans or where they're on injections, having their support for when it happens and what they can do to come off it, so they haven't got the fear. And exercise actually really plays into that, because obviously making sure you've got enough muscle mass is going to really impact your metabolism, metabolic health. So I do obviously mention that as well. But yeah, absolutely, it's explaining that, how they can eat so that they're not going to gain weight again.
I think that's something that concerns me more so as a fitness professional who works with a lot of people over 40, often in their 50s and 60s, is that I know how much we're working so hard to hang on to muscle mass. We're clinging on to it. We're stimulating it. We're telling it we still want it. We want to protect your bones and your health for the future. But rapid weight loss, whether that's through a very low calorie diet, like Cambridge plan, whether it is through weight loss injections, or whether it is through perhaps very strict fasting or something like that without the injections, they're just so tunnel visioned that they want to lose weight rapidly. Inevitably, your body's in a position where it wants to let go of muscle mass anyway. And if it's on a very low calorie diet, it's going to lose muscle mass quickly. So this is a big challenge, I think, for particularly women, in terms of postmenopausally women whose hormones are like, we're done with muscle mass now, we're done with bone density now. Do you get women who come to you more as like a postmenopausal, or perimenopausal, I'm just trying to find my way in this new chapter in my life. My body is changing in ways I don't understand. I don't want to necessarily have to just live like this and have all of these hot flashes and things. If I can manage it through my food, I'd love to. Is that another scenario by which women come to you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really common that women are actually focusing more on nutrition now, like you say, to help with the perimenopausal, menopausal symptoms, and understand that actually what we eat can really impact the symptoms. And some women manage it completely, nutritionally and with lifestyle changes without having to go on HRT. So yeah, definitely that's another thing that I do help women with. And like you said, exercise is also really important. And that's what I say about being on the weight loss drugs or something really extreme. When we get to perimenopause or menopause, that's when we're really going to start to see it, because from 30 we start to lose 3 to 5% of our muscle mass, and that impacts your metabolic health and insulin sensitivity. So when it comes to PCOS, we really need to protect our muscle mass, because that's going to impact your insulin sensitivity.
So is that kind of the key message that you want to get out there in terms of the work that you do and your calling to do it? What's the main message that you want people listening to hear?
We're not all the same. So really learn your body, learn what works for you. When it comes to looking after your health long term, it is more than just nutrition. It's making sure you manage your gut health, your stress levels, your sleep. And then if you've got all of those, you're kind of in a good place, and you can focus on your nutrition. Do it now, focus on it now, so that by the time you do get to perimenopausal stage, your body is in the best possible place to manage it. And I'm very much somebody who tries to emphasize it's more small, consistent changes over big overhauls. Don't try and change everything at once. Just pick 1 or 2 small micro things and the habits to change. What will be the main thing for one person won't be for another person. It really depends on the person.
Really. So a question I like to ask everybody who does the podcast, we've called this podcast Freedom Through Fitness, but what does that phrase mean for you?
I guess freedom through fitness for me means just being able to show up as the best version of me, and making sure that I'm doing everything I can so that I'm healthier later in life, for my kids and also for myself.
And what about in the case of the clients that you work with? How have you seen them gaining freedom through taking control over their nutrition?
Yeah, so have more energy. So that's a big one I see really early on, is a lot of my clients saying, I've got more energy, I've got more motivation. So what I notice, then therefore have more motivation to go to the gym and work out. And then the more you exercise, the better you feel. And the more you exercise, the more muscle mass you have. So then it helps you lose weight. So I noticed that whole cycle of, initially having more energy and then feeling better and then being able to exercise more. And then all of that kind of works together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your time. If people want to find out more about how to work with you, how can they go about that?
Yes, so I've got a website, Jenna Dawn Nutrition. I've also got Instagram page, which is again, Jenna_Dawn_Nutrition. So people can find me on either of those 2 platforms.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I know that what we talked about today will be so useful for a lot of people. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode as much as I did recording it. If something here has made you think differently, encouraged you to take action, or reminded you of what you're capable of, I would love to know. Tell us what your golden nugget was and what it inspired you to try over at freedompod.focusedpt.co.uk. And if you're new to the podcast, be sure to scroll back through season 1. You will find powerful conversations with everyday people making extraordinary change, like CrossFit legend Kelly Friel on mastering mindset, Ellie Steele on balancing international record-breaking elite lifting with family life, and Piers Day on rebuilding mental resilience after illness and trauma. You'll be amazed at what's possible when you start prioritizing your health, not just for how you look, but for the freedom it gives you. Until next time, I'm your host, Meg Batchelor, and this is Freedom Through Fitness.